You are standing before one of the greatest mysteries ever recorded, smothered by a web of interests that tries to keep you on the surface. The four pillars of existence, repeated in the cardinal directions, in the seasons of the year, in the mind's dominant states, and even in human life cycles, are not a random coincidence. You are facing an ancient pattern that reverberates with every breath and dares to challenge the idea of time as a straight line and reality as something solid and unchanging. A question arises: why has this code, present in atoms and in the cosmic structure, been diluted and silenced over the centuries? Great civilizations revered it, aligned their temples with the stars, and used symbols that now lie forgotten in caves or restricted scrolls. While the majority remain disconnected and trapped in mechanical routines, a select few have mastered these secrets to shape time, energy, and perception to their advantage. We live in a world that treats body, emotion, mind, and spirit as if they were separate parts, and this isolation did not happen by accident. There is something off-limits about recognizing that each cell responds to your consciousness, that the past is not a fixed weight, and that the future can be rewritten with near mathematical precision. Amid this scarcity of information, the idea of four secret codes echoes like an ancient whisper, inviting you to realize that reality not only can but must be reimagined.
There is a quiet restlessness that lives in many of us. It is a vague and almost imperceptible feeling that we are experiencing only the surface of what reality truly is. As if we were inside a fragmented system, operating under rules we never chose, following routines we do not completely understand. Something seems to be missing, not in terms of possessions, but in terms of meaning. When we look closely at the world, it becomes hard to ignore a recurring pattern: 4 seasons, 4 cardinal directions, 4 lunar phases, 4 elements of nature, 4 layers of the human being: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, and 4 dominant states of the mind. The recurrence of the number 4 cuts across cultures, times, and languages, as if it is pointing to a fundamental structure of existence, a code, a central framework. This pattern is not new, it is ancient. Although it appears in the shapes of nature and in the cycles of life, it was gradually diluted, hidden, and forgotten. In its place came a fragmented narrative that divided what was integral, disconnected what should have been continuous, and reduced the human being to a predictable sequence of tasks and expectations. Yet there is another way to read it, one that views these 4 pillars not as symbolic coincidences, but as parts of a deeper architecture, a matrix that unites biology, consciousness, time, and reality. This is not an invitation to blind belief, but to conscious perception. What is at stake is not an esoteric mystery, but the ability to recognize our own internal codes and bring back a more complete way of existing. Perhaps you have already felt it, the intuition that life is more than the roles you play, the sense that there is a wider rhythm guiding each breath. This journey begins when you listen to that subtle call. Deep down, awakening is remembering, and remembering is reconnecting with what, even when forgotten, never stopped pulsing within you. The question that must be asked is not simple, but it can no longer be avoided. Are we only living a fragment of reality while a larger, silent, and powerful pattern operates beyond our reach? There is a structure, repeated in different scales of existence, that seems to organize everything. A pattern of 4 elements that repeats with near mathematical precision. 4 directions, 4 bodies, 4 times, 4 states of mind. This pattern is not poetic imagery or an ancient superstition. It is code. It is cosmic engineering. It is etched into the very structure of life, from atoms to the universe. The alchemists knew it. The shamans knew it. The great masters of sacred geometry knew it. They were not just observing the world, they were decoding its hidden architecture. And what they found is something even modern science is starting to glimpse: a matrix of symmetry and interconnection. However, something went wrong. Humanity began operating under an artificial perspective, fragmentation. The body is in one place, the mind is in another. Emotions are weakness, intuition is fantasy, time is a straight line, and reality is whatever you can touch. Under this narrow lens, human beings lose their wholeness. By becoming fragmented, they also become manageable. This is not a coincidence. It was orchestrated. When the connection with nature's cycles is severed, when ancient knowledge is silenced and intuition is discredited, people become predictable, consumable, and above all, lost. The dominant culture needs them to stay that way, disconnected from their original power and unable to see the bigger game. But this quadruple pattern, which most people ignore, is like a silent map left for us in every corner of existence. It is in the spiral of DNA organized in pairs and unfolding in 4 bases. It is in the wake and sleep cycle, in the 4 stages of human development, in the seasons of the year, on the compass directions, and even in the universal archetypes that Jung described: instinctive mind, emotional mind, rational mind, and spiritual mind. Everything echoes the same harmony. Noticing this is not just some esoteric curiosity, it is a key. Because when human beings start seeing this hidden design, they understand that life is not a straight line leading to death, but a mandala expanding outward. They stop acting like a pawn stuck in a predetermined fate and start becoming the artisan of their own path. That explains why many spiritual traditions, even those far apart from each other, have similar practices: meditation, fasting, awareness of lunar phases, and attunement to the elements of nature. These are not empty rituals. They are ways to align the body and mind with the code of reality. When you start to align with it, something amazing happens. Time seems to slow down, not because the world changes, but because your perception expands. Reality, once solid and unchangeable, begins to respond. Tiny coincidences arise, unexpected insights bloom, and intuition, once ignored, begins to speak. You feel that something has awakened, and that something is you. Ultimately, this is not about running away from the world, but about navigating it with new eyes. Those who begin to see this pattern stop being mere survivors and become conscious creators of their own reality. Because once you recognize the entire board, the old rule of automatic repetition no longer applies. From there, another game begins, a game where the next step is not imposed from outside, but drawn from within. Picture an ancient civilization where sky and earth were not opposites but complements, where gazing at the heavens was also an inward journey. A people who saw no boundaries between what was visible and invisible, tangible and intuitive. There, the sacred was not a concept but a daily practice. The 4 elements were not mere decorative symbols, but living forces, invoked with reverence and wisdom. Fire, water, air, and earth, each with its own function, personality, and language. Their temples were not just buildings, but cosmic instruments, erected with incredible precision, aligned with stars, cycles, and directions such as north, south, east, and west, as though the architecture itself knew how to pray. These ancient peoples understood something that, somewhere along the way, we left behind. Or perhaps we were taught to forget it. When you look at the pyramids in Egypt or the ceremonial platforms in the Andes, you do not just see blocks of stone. You see an intelligence aligned with the sky. Their construction followed the rhythm of the universe, not a clock on the wall. Time was understood as a circular or spiral flow, not a straight line. Their calendars were living expressions of celestial movements, not productivity tools but maps of the soul. Reality to them was pliable, a mirror reflecting the inner states of those who observed it. If you were in harmony, the world responded with synchronicity. If you carried inner chaos, chaos showed up on the outside. It was a profound understanding, now almost forgotten, that body, mind, spirit, and emotion form one interdependent system. Humans were not separate pieces of creation, but a crucial knot in the cosmic web. Much of this knowledge has reached us in fragments: myths, ancient manuscripts, symbols carved in stone, stelae covered with cryptic inscriptions. Rarely are these treasures displayed in big museums. They are hidden away in monasteries, caves, or in oral traditions passed from elders to students, in scrolls that only open for those who search with the heart, not just the eyes. Why? Because what is at stake is not just history, it is power. Knowing how the universe interacts with human beings grants autonomy. And spiritual autonomy does not serve systems that feed on dependence. This was not just a cultural shift, it was a paradigm shift. Living knowledge was replaced by dogma, direct practice became empty ritual, and genuine connection was swapped for control. Even so, this thread was never truly broken. It simply went underground, surviving between the lines. It remains alive in recurring dreams, sudden visions, and inexplicable intuitions. How many times have you felt you remember something you never actually studied, or felt deeply moved by a symbol or a word for no apparent reason? This whisper that will not be silenced, even when everything around is noise, is the echo of an ancient memory. This calling is not an invitation to fantasize, it is an impulse to return. A return to the point of balance among the four bodies: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. A reminder that reality is not a theater with a fixed script, but an interactive stage. What you think, feel, and believe shapes what appears. And the code that activates this dance between the inner and outer worlds is not lost. It has never been outside you. It beats quietly, waiting for someone brave enough to listen. Perhaps the next step is not about chasing new answers, but about decoding what has always been in front of us, disguised as coincidence. When you look at time through eyes conditioned by routine and a linear mindset, it seems simple, almost mechanical. You are born, you grow up, you live, and one day you die. This straight path, which few dare to question, is viewed as the only possible direction, a kind of track that leads life from point A to point B. Meanwhile, the present slips away like sand between your fingers, and the future remains forever out of reach. But that is only one way to see it. There is another, both ancient and revolutionary: time as a dynamic field, not a line. Think of it as a sphere that pulses in every direction, where past, present, and future do not exist as isolated phases, but as interwoven aspects of one living system. This way of seeing time did not emerge with modern physics. It was only rediscovered by it. In various ancestral spiritual traditions, from Andean shamanism to Hermetic teachings, time has long been taught as an experience that unfolds internally. It is alive, malleable, and sensitive to consciousness. Today, physicists like Carlo Rovelli, with his relational time theory, and David Bohm, with his notion of the implicate order, point to exactly that. Time is not a fixed ruler. It is relative, contextual, and subjective. It does not exist on its own, but depends on the observer, on relationships, and on experience. As Bohm said, reality is more like a symphony than a photograph. In other words, everything takes place within a network of simultaneous interactions, and time responds accordingly. From this new, or perhaps ancient, viewpoint, a powerful realization emerges. Time is not a ready-made path, but a mirror. It reflects what we carry inside. The past is not a finished book, but a field of living memories that keep sending out signals. When these memories are not understood or integrated, they pop up again like repeated patterns, And the future is not some distant place, but a potential response to the states of consciousness you nurture right now. The present is the only active gap where transformation can happen. It is the canvas where every possible reality can be projected, depending on the lens you use. You may already have noticed this in your own life, emotional patterns that repeat themselves with stunning precision, relationships that appear different but follow the same script, family frustrations, cycles of fear, repeating blocks. All of it seems new, yet it has the same root. It is unresolved time. Parts of your story that operate backstage because they have not been brought into the light of awareness. Here lies the key. Changing your relationship with time changes your relationship with reality. This does not mean traveling to the past like in a sci-fi movie. It means updating your inner frequency in the here and now. Every emotion, memory, and decision is data fed into this field. And the field, like an intelligent organism, reacts. When you raise the vibrational quality of your present through mindful awareness, emotional healing, and spiritual practices, you rewrite the information stored in the past and reshape what the future holds. All this happens without you leaving your seat. To illustrate, imagine someone who constantly ends up in relationships marked by rejection. They might conclude that the world is unfair, that people are cold, that love is scarce. But if they go to the emotional root of that experience, maybe an abandonment in childhood or a forgotten wound, and truly welcome that part of themselves, they change their frequency. Instead of reliving the same old story, they craft a new narrative, consciously and compassionately. Time, sensitive to this new state, responds with different possibilities. This understanding changes everything. Time is no longer the villain that steals youth or the tyrant that rushes us. It becomes a silent ally, a field of manifestation. That is why so many spiritual traditions advise us to live in the present moment. But truly, living in the now goes far beyond passively being present. It means inhabiting each moment with intention, depth, openness to what has not yet been lived, and the courage to face whatever still hurts. At that point, time reveals its true nature. It is not a sequence of external events, but an internal language. And that language can be learned. Meditation, journaling, family constellations, somatic therapies, states of expanded consciousness. All of these can guide you into that field and help you interact with it. It is like walking into a dark room with a flashlight. When you shine light on forgotten corners, you change the entire atmosphere. The more you develop this listening skill, the less time feels like something that just slips away. It becomes something you inhabit. You are not here simply to watch the days go by, but to decode them. After all, time, like consciousness, is not measured in minutes. It is measured in presence. If all this is true, if time is a field that responds to our vibration, then the question that hangs in the air is, which future are you feeding right now? While you think you are just living another day, you might be, without even realizing it, shaping the next chapter that will arrive at your door. If time is not a straight line but a living, dynamic, and shapeable field, then accessing it depends on the observer's state of being. This is where an often underrated factor steps into the spotlight: the mind. Not the brain as an isolated organ, but the mind as a vibrational bridge linking consciousness to reality. When this bridge is misunderstood, it becomes a maze. Thoughts loop around on repeat, like a scratched record. But once it is deciphered, the mind reveals itself as a key that can open doors between worlds, reinterpret memories, and even change our perception of time. Science has already demonstrated that the human mind operates mostly in 4 frequency bands: beta, alpha, theta, and delta. But these waves are not just lines on an EEG. They are passages, states of consciousness that work like radio stations, each transmitting a different kind of internal and external reality. In beta, where most of us spend a large portion of the day, the mind is on high alert. We respond to external stimuli, chase deadlines, deal with pressure and constant distractions. This is the autopilot mode. It is helpful for immediate problem solving, but limited for accessing deeper wisdom or creating something truly new. When we slip into alpha, something changes. The mind slows down, ideas flow more freely, intuition begins to whisper. It is like cracking a window open to the creative and imaginative world, the place where solutions that logical reasoning cannot find often emerge. In theta, we go even deeper. Here we enter the realm of the subconscious. It is a fertile zone, but rarely explored. It is home to beliefs, memories, traumas, and dormant potentials. Children spend a lot of time in theta, which is why their minds absorb everything like a sponge. Theta is also where profound healing and long-lasting mental reprogramming can happen. Delta is the slowest and deepest state. In Delta, individual consciousness nearly disappears. Body and mind enter a regeneration mode. Sleep science links this state to cellular recovery and neural reorganization. Spiritually, it is seen as a channel that connects us with subtle fields beyond the ego, a universal source. These frequencies are inner gateways. Most people go through life with them locked up, not even aware of their existence. Our hyperconnected system, overloaded with stimuli and shaped by collective anxiety, conditions us to stay stuck in beta mode. This is no accident. Agitated minds do not question, do not create, and do not awaken. But what if we could learn to move among these states intentionally, like choosing a TV channel or turning a radio dial? The truth is, we can. Ancient practices such as meditation, breathing exercises like pranayama, binaural beats, guided imagery, and even forest bathing can induce alpha, theta, or delta states. Not as a form of escape, but as a way home, returning to who we are beneath the mental overload. Put simply, the mind is an antenna. It both transmits and receives signals. The signals you send out, your thoughts, emotions, and beliefs, define what you attract. Frequency is not a mystical buzzword. It is a measurable vibration. If you harbor fear, you resonate with realities based on fear. If you cultivate gratitude, you resonate with abundance. The mind is the command center, an interdimensional transmitter that shapes your reality from the inside out. This viewpoint completely reframes how we see time. If time can be molded, and the mind is the tool that molds it, then your inner state changes the narrative arc of your own life. You are not stuck with an unchangeable past, nor are you doomed to repeat the same patterns. By entering certain mental states, you can reinterpret memories, release traumas, and envision futures that once seemed out of reach. Here, quantum physics meets ancient mysticism. The outer world aligns with the inner world. As Hermes Trismegistus stated, as above, so below, as within, so without. If you master the flow of your mind, you not only alter your perception of the present, you reshape the timeline you inhabit. This is not just poetic, it is practical. Take a straightforward example. Before going to sleep, take 5 minutes to breathe deeply and imagine a desired future as if it is already happening. Do this when you are relaxed, entering alpha or theta. That simple practice, done consistently, begins to realign your emotions, your thoughts, and ultimately, your choices. The future starts to respond to your current vibration. Here is the key, and it has always been right here, inside your own mind. What is often missing is the awareness of how to access it, because the mind is not where the journey ends. It is just the initial portal. When you learn to flow with your natural rhythms, you begin to operate on a new level of reality, one where the external world does not mold you by default. You shape the world that responds to you. This is where another piece of the code emerges, linking mind, time, and energy more profoundly. You call the shots, and the world answers in return. Everything is connected: body, mind, time, reality. 4 pillars that seem like isolated puzzle pieces when taken separately, yet fit together perfectly when combined, revealing a precise and almost inevitable architecture. What once seemed mystical or symbolic becomes a coherent organizational pattern of existence. What seemed hidden was only waiting for a different way of seeing. Think about the body. More than a physical structure, it is an instrument of perception. Every internal system, nervous, endocrine, immune, energetic, responds not just to the environment, but to mental and emotional states as well. In beta, the body tenses up. In theta, the body relaxes, heals, and reorganizes. The physical is constantly shaped by the non-physical. Nothing is truly isolated. Meanwhile, the mind is not just a storage place for ideas. It is a vibrational field acting as both filter and transmitter. Whatever you hold inside, fear, clarity, doubt, presence, shapes what you see and what you experience. When the mind aligns with the other dimensions of your being, you enter a state of coherence. When it is disconnected, you get static. Time, far from being a mechanical sequence of events, reveals itself as a field of possibilities. When you truly inhabit the present, you can shift your relationship with the past and steer the future in a new direction. Memories are no longer a prison, they are gateways. Expectations are no longer automatic projections, they become conscious decisions. And reality? Reality responds. It is not a fixed screen where events unfold with no regard for you. It is an active mirror that accurately reflects the vibrational pattern of whoever observes it. This is why so many personal transformation stories begin with a quiet moment of surrender, a shift in the inner state that precedes any visible outward change. At this point, the 5 elements previously discussed come together. The so-called conspiracy to hide the quadruple pattern is not just a story of repression. It also reflects the collective state of disconnection. Forgetting the ancestral legacy is the same as forgetting ourselves. The realization that time is a living field unmasks what the system prefers to keep invisible. Repetition is optional. Change always starts in the present, and mental frequencies are not just cerebral details but the knobs on the control panel of inner reality. What remains then is to break free from old chains and accept our own power. Understanding the code is one thing, but living by it is another. This requires integrity across the 4 bodies: physical, presence; emotional, honesty; mental, clarity; and spiritual, purpose. That integration is not an impossible ideal, but a continuous process, a kind of daily alchemy made of simple, conscious choices. Reality does not transform just because you understand the code. It transforms when you live from it. Life stops being something that happens to you and starts being something that responds to you. This silent shift changes everything. Maybe, in the end, you will realize that you always knew this. You always felt it. You were never really separate from it, only asleep. Picture someone living on autopilot. They wake up to an alarm, rush to meet their responsibilities, dive into notifications, recycle the same anxious thoughts, and collapse into bed at the end of the day, only to repeat it all tomorrow. Everything feels off, although nothing is blatantly wrong. There is just a persistent emptiness, a sense of disconnection from themselves and the world. This cycle goes on for years. Then, almost imperceptibly, a tiny crack appears. Maybe a crisis, a loss, or a nagging question. It disrupts the daily routine enough to let something deeper surface. In that quiet opening, something ancient starts to stir, a call to look inward. That is when the code begins to show itself, even without a name. First, the body, the need for mindful breathing, to feel what has been numbed, to slow down. Then comes emotion, recognizing that what was labeled anxiety is actually the buildup of everything unprocessed. The mind starts relinquishing space, the noise recedes, silence arrives. As this unfolds, time changes, not in terms of hours in a day, but in the quality of presence. The past stops haunting, the future stops threatening, attention settles into the now, where everything is alive and vibrant. A gateway. It is here that reality begins to respond differently. Subtle signs, synchronicities, and encounters appear, as if the universe had been waiting for this alignment. There is no magic formula or guru in this story. It is about learning to listen, to reconnect with one's own rhythms, choosing simple yet profound actions, silent walks, deep breathing, writing down whatever hurts, meditating without expectations. Each step opens a new layer of the code. That is how the quadruple pattern, body, emotion, mind, spirit, finds harmony, not as a distant ideal, but as a lived reality. In this new state, what used to feel like a prison becomes a gateway. The same life now appears under a different light. Because when the code is activated, it is not the world that changes, it is the person who sees it. And from that viewpoint, reality no longer needs to repeat what it was. It begins to answer to what is. Expanding individual awareness is only the first step. When someone begins to access the quadruple code and live from that space, the shift does not stop with them. It resonates outward. Consciousness is contagious, so this quiet change starts to unsettle entire systems that rely on collective disconnection. Imagine a society where people realize that time is not a railroad but a field, that they can regulate their mental states, and that they integrate body, emotion, mind, and spirit as a single, conscious whole. How would this transform our schools, workplaces, and healthcare? What impact would it have on human relationships, our interaction with nature, our use of technology, and our treatment of others? In a world that treats time like a commodity and the body like a machine, this perspective is radical. It breaks the logic of scarcity, non-stop productivity, and endless comparison. It halts the narrative that you must run faster, compete harder, collect more. In its place, it offers another storyline. Life as cyclical, value in presence, and each individual carrying within themselves the key to shaping their reality. On a large scale, the activation of this code poses a genuine threat to any system that profits from fear, misinformation, and conditioning. People who find alignment are not easily manipulated. Those who connect to their inner axis do not need intermediaries to access the sacred. They do not consume prefab narratives, do not respond to predictable triggers. They create, they feel, they perceive. This is not fantasy, it is a logical outcome. Human history has seen leaps in consciousness occurring in cycles, and we may be in such a moment right now. A turning point where old structures collapse and more subtle, intelligent ways of living start to surface. The code is not an alternative theory. It is an answer to a world in crisis, and at the same time, a seed of renewal. If planted with presence, it can sprout new ways of living. If nourished with practice, it can flourish into freer communities. If sustained with intention, it can realign the trajectory of humanity itself. When human beings remember who they are, the world must inevitably reorganize itself around that remembrance. Sometimes everything goes silent. The noise of the world fades away, the mind slows down, the body grows still. In that space between one thought and the next, something arises that cannot be easily explained. A recognition, not of something new, but of something ancient, essential, and intimately familiar, like a hidden truth stirring just beneath your skin. This code we have been discussing does not exist outside you. It never did. It beats in the seasons, in the rhythm of your heartbeat, in the flow of your breath. It vibrates in the tides, in deep sleep, and in the clarity of one mindful moment. It is there in how your body responds to intuition, in the way time stretches or contracts depending on your inner state. It is everywhere, quietly waiting to be remembered. Each pillar, body, mind, emotion, spirit, is like a well-tuned string. In harmony, they create a field of coherence that unlocks access to wider dimensions of reality. Time stops feeling like a trap. The mind stops looping. The body stops weighing you down. Everything aligns around a new core, conscious presence. You may have felt glimpses of this during a sunset, a silent hug, or the fertile emptiness of a deep meditation. Those moments when everything feels right, when the world stops being a threat and becomes an extension of yourself. In those pauses, the code reveals itself, and a new way of living nudges you. Not as a theory, but as a real possibility. The metaphor is straightforward. Reality is like a cube, a three-dimensional object within a four-dimensional field. Rotating this cube changes its projection. You can live your life seeing only one of its faces, or you can learn to turn it around. The code is the lever, consciousness is the force, time is the stage, so the question stands not as a challenge, but as a mirror. If all of this is already encoded in you, if this pattern has always been there waiting to be seen, then what still holds you back from living in a completely new way? Every change begins with the awareness of your role as a co-creator. The only way to connect with this deeper wisdom is through practice. We have created audio tools to help you access this expanded state of consciousness. To learn more and get immediate access, click the link on the screen or check the comments. If this message resonated with you, leave a comment saying, "It made sense to me,"